Thank you. On behalf of the Central Executive Committee of the Communist Party of Canada, I bring fraternal greetings to the 24th International Meeting of Communist and Workers' Parties. We thank the Communist Party of Cuba for hosting this important gathering. We salute the heroic people of Cuba and their socialist revolution, which for over 6 decades has stood as a beacon of dignity, resistance, and proletarian internationalism in the face of the most brutal imperialist siege. The Communist Party of Canada vehemently condemns the ongoing United States blockade against Cuba, an act of collective punishment and economic warfare that flagrantly violates international law. Shamefully, the Mark Carney government in Canada has begun shifting Canada's long-standing positions regarding Cuba. In July, Canada abstained when the majority of the world voted to debate the US's inhumane and genocidal actions. The Canadian government has deepened Cuba's isolation by issuing travel warnings that disrupted Cuba's tourism industry and maintained silence in the face of threats of invasion. We say no more appeasement of Trump and Rubio. We demand that the Canadian government immediately break its complicity with the blockade and denounce it, lift the travel advisory, and send oil to Cuba. Comrades, we meet at a moment of profound danger. The growing capitalist crisis of overaccumulation and the rise of new centers of economic power, such as Russia, India, and China, have led the most aggressive imperialist forces, above all United States imperialism, to abandon even the pretense of multilateralism. While the decline of US imperialism is relative, it remains the main imperialist threat. We are witnessing a return to naked barbarism, where US imperialism uses tariffs, sanctions, and now openly uses military force to maintain hegemony. These increased aggressions and massive militarization are an existential threat to humankind in the form of the growing threat of nuclear war and accelerated climate catastrophe. Anger over declining wages and living standards are leading the bourgeoisie to promote rising reactionary and fascist movements that pretend to be anti-system. In an increasing number of countries, right-wing populism now holds state power. We see our task as not to form alliances with more so-called democratic bourgeois forces that advocate continued erosion of living standards, but to build the anti-monopoly, anti-imperialist alliance of the working class and its allies that can be a genuine barrier to fascism by undermining the objective conditions that allow fascist movements to grow. We must fight the growing reaction with an independent class struggle alternative that offers working people advances. Comrades, Canada is an imperialist country in its own right, closely allied with US capital. Behind the rhetoric, Mark Carney's goal, and that of Canada's monopolies, is to further integrate and subordinate Canada's economy into the United States, despite current disputes with Trump. We reject the false choice between reactionary protectionism and corporate free trade. Both serve capital at the expense of working people. We fight for multilateral and mutually beneficial trade deals in the inspiring spirit and example of ALBA. The Carney government talks about sovereignty against Trump's threats to Canada itself or to Greenland, but continues to tail US imperialism. Carney's response is not to resist imperialism, but to reorient itself within it. His Middle Powers project is a plan for Canadian and European imperialism to get a seat at the head of the table, not to get rid of the table. And despite tactical disagreements, the transatlantic imperialist alliance, including Canada, remains intact, united by its shared position atop the global system of capitalist exploitation. The increased aggression of imperialism is tearing apart international law and the United Nations Charter. Our party defends the principles of international law, sovereign equality, self-determination, non-intervention, and peaceful resolutions of disputes. The task to defend these principles, build up an international balance of forces to enforce international law, and struggle to democratize the UN into a body that serves the peoples of the world. Comrades, the struggle inside Canada is sharpening as well. The Carney government uses US annexation and tariff threats as pretext for the deepest austerity since the 1990s to finance his plan to triple military spending to 5% of the GDP. Carney's military stimulus is justified by claims it will create jobs, but this is a lie designed to funnel public money to monopoly corporate interests. The research proves otherwise about military spending. For every $1 million spent on the military, only 5 jobs are created. The same amount on healthcare creates 9 jobs, and on education, 13 jobs. War spending is the least effective way to put food on working families' tables and the most effective way to move public funds to corporate interests. With little to no working class representation in Canada's parliament, the struggle is increasingly extra-parliamentary. The real alternative to the corporate agenda of war and austerity is working class, anti-monopoly, anti-imperialist people's coalition, a coalition in the streets with a reflection in electoral politics. This anti-monopoly, anti-imperialist alliance we seek cannot be composed only of communists, but it cannot exist without communists organized independently as its foundation. The alliance would not necessarily lead to socialism. However, given Canada's objective and subjective conditions, forging such an alliance rooted in labor and democratic struggles corresponds to the current phase of the struggle to gather forces to overthrow capitalism. Comrades, we are thankful that the International Meeting of Communist and Workers' Parties has convened after a gap of 2 years. Comradely, principled discussion among parties with the aim of clarifying and deepening our political analysis are very important and have been missed in the last 2 years. But most important is united action on core questions, in full solidarity with Cuba and Palestine, opposition to militarization and imperialist war, and the fight for labor and democratic rights in the face of rising war and reaction. Our meetings are far more than symbolic exercises. Internationalism is one of our greatest strengths, and we need to build upon it to strengthen our movement, for never have we seen a world where socialism is more necessary. We express our confidence in the unity of the Communist and Workers' Parties, in our historic struggle against oppression and exploitation, and for peace, for socialism. Long live socialist Cuba. Long live Marxism-Leninism. Long live proletarian internationalism.